Viewers, the latest news about Ethiopia, Tigray and Amhara is that now the situation is unsustainable. Insurgent group the TDF and OLA, in particular, want accountability for crimes committed and seem to feel they are within reach of victory. For the first time, most Tigrayans are in favor of secession, unrealistic as that may be. Viewers, proposals for dialogue and consultations are not realistic. At least 4 possible scenarios present themselves. Number 1. Tigrayan forces are embattled but clearly well led, motivated and enjoying broad popular support. They amassed military equipment during the early stages of the conflict and faced an unwieldy coalition of demotivated ENDF, Amhara militias and EDF conscripts. To break the current impasse, however, the TDF must exploit their new alliance with insurgent groups, particularly the OLA, and divide their opponents militarily and politically. If the TDF does not receive outside assistance to break the federal blockade, OLA growth and battlefield engagement will be the key factor in the coming months. In a post-war scenario where the balance of societal forces remains finely balanced, the TDF-OLA coalition might attempt to resuscitate the current constitution under their leadership. This, make do and mend, EPRDF 2.0 scenario would be unstable. It would be vulnerable to accusations that the TPLF remained the power behind the throne. In the event of a sweeping TDF-OLA victory, a much looser confederal constitution can be imagined, satisfying the appetite of many groups for greater self-determination but posing new questions about unity. In either case, economic and political liberalization would be unlikely as the victorious party guarded carefully against counter-revolution. Number 2. If the TDF-OLA alliance cannot achieve a breakthrough, the most likely medium-term scenario is a stalemate. This is more likely than capitulation in the face of internal pressure. The human toll of this scenario would be enormous, first within a Tigray state remaining under blockage and experiencing large-scale famine, but also in neighboring territories feeling the effects of war and gradually elsewhere. Directing ever more resources towards war, the economy would continue to decline, and the cost of living would rise to punishing levels. Unrest would grow, first in territories like Oromia and Amhara due to hunger, but later elsewhere until Addis faced multiple insurgencies. The country could fragment slowly in the form of Somalization, as component states and peoples no longer recognize the political center and forge new relationships to deal with economic and security challenges. Stalemate will ultimately be a recipe for gradual state failure. Abiy's coalition could quickly come apart, as could the wider political settlement as the country's composite territories begin to look to one another and to their neighbors rather than the center. Number 3. Federal forces are currently too weak to achieve outright military victory. Provided Amhara elites remain supportive, however, they can source adequate manpower to continue a war of attrition against the TDF. Victory might then be possible if grinding hardship diminishes popular support for the war within Tigray. The Ethiopian leadership would need to withstand a degree of international condemnation and targeted sanctions, and ride out the current difficulties with Forex, which have exacerbated a halt to aid payments and loans from the IMF and World Bank. History suggests this is possible, at least for the medium term. International condemnation will also be far from universal. A number of African governments will remain supportive, acquiescent, while diplomatic if not material support could be forthcoming from the likes of Turkey, Iran, Russia or China. The cost associated with this victory would, however, be considerable. Blockade and ultimately starvation of Tigray could be maintained through even stronger nationalist and xenophobic rhetoric. It would also require further repression of dissent. There would be an ever-growing risk of the ruling coalition fracturing in the face of economic and security difficulties, including unemployment, inflation and criminality. The damage to state capacity, legitimacy and acceptance by peripheries of the central government could be fatal, setting a slow form of state collapse in train. Number 4. A fourth possibility is that the international community might force a peace deal upon the parties. The region has seen strong external leadership on peace agreements in Kenya, Sudan and South Sudan. But even a ceasefire and talks would require the TPLF and federal leadership to feel they are trapped in a hurting stalemate. Tigray would require an end to the economic and humanitarian blockade, a key prop of Addis' strategy against them to make this palatable. A deal would provide the parties with time to regroup, which could become attractive at a later point. In the short term it seems unlikely. The parties are too divided and committed to military solutions. No foreign power seems willing to invest political capital in brokering negotiations, and the federal government has so far proved resistant to diplomatic overtures. Questions is that where next? Of the above 4 points, a TDF-OLA coalition win seems more likely than an outright government victory or a forced peace, at least for the coming year. A forced peace would be the least disruptive option, allowing deferment of seemingly insoluble challenges and a cooling of heads. Moreover, it could provide an off-ramp for a defeated but defiant Abiy who could exit somewhat gracefully, leaving questions of accountability open. But continued stalemate and protracted conflict is also likely. It could be the worst scenario for the millions now facing hunger and destitution, whether in Tigray, Amhara or Afar regions. It is also the route most likely to damage the Ethiopian state to the point of failure. Formal dissolution of Ethiopia is unlikely anytime soon. The bar is set very high both for recognizing secession and for redrawing of state boundaries. The country could, however, fragment slowly in the form of Somalization. As component states and peoples no longer recognize the political center and forge new relationships to deal with economic and security challenges. This would open a conundrum for parts of the country that have contestable boundaries or numerous ethnic groups or autonomous entities. It might also throw up new and unwanted surprises, not least the relationship to neighbors such as Somalia or the boundaries for Amhara and Oromia and even Eritrea. The country that in many ways is at the heart of Ethiopia's difficulties.